Here we will see exception object methods in PHP. Exceptions are used by functions and methods to send information about errors and unexpected behavior of the program. The exception object has no public properties, but it has private and protected properties which can be written to or read from using the constructor and methods. The exception object has the following methods. First is exception. This is the constructor of the exception object. This constructor is used to create an exception object and set some of its properties. General syntax is new exception and parameters are message, code and previous. Where message is an optional parameter. It is a string describing why the exception was thrown. Code is also optional parameter. It is an integer that can be used to easily distinguish this exception from others of the same type. And previous is also optional. If this exception was thrown in a catch block of another exception, it is recommended to pass that exception into this parameter. Next is Getcode method, which returns an integer which can be used to identify the exception. General syntax is exception Getcode. Here we have written this example. In try statement, we have thrown the exception as throw new exception, the message as an error occurred and the code will be 120. And in catch statement, we will print the error code with error code, the exception object E and get code. Then the output will be 120 since we have passed the error code as 120. Next is getFile method, which returns the absolute path to the file where an exception occurred. General syntax is exception getFile. In this example, in try statement, we have thrown the new exception as an error occurred, and in catch statement, we have printed that error in this file is E, which is the object of exception E get file. Then the output will be error in this file and the file name. Next is get message. This method returns a description of the error or behavior that caused the exception to be thrown. General syntax is exception get message. Here in this example, in try statement, we throw new exception with message and error occurred. And in catch statement, we print the message with exception object. Then the output will be an error occurred, the message that we have passed through exception. Next is Getline. This method returns the line number of the line of code which threw an exception. General syntax is exception getLine. Here in this example, in try statement, we throw new exception with message and error occurred. But in catch statement, we call the getLine method with echo, then the output will be 7. Next is getPrevious. If the exception was triggered by another one, then the getPrevious method returns the other exception. Otherwise, it returns null. General syntax is exception getPrevious. Here in this example, we have used two try blocks. In first try block, we have written the another try block which will throw the exception as an error occurred with code 1. And inside the second try block catch statement, we throw another exception, throw new exception, another error occurred with code 2 and the exception object is E1. And in catch statement of first try block, we call the getPrevious method and getMessage. Then the output will be exception and error occurred and the file name where the error occurs, that is first catch statement. Next is getTrace. This method returns a stack trace in the form of an array. General syntax is exception getTrace. Here we have written this function my function with parameter num, and it will throw an exception, and inside try block we call the function my function, and in catch statement we print the getTrace method. Here it will display in array format, so use print r function.